Off of Old Cherokee Road in Lexington is that of Elena Moore.
This case started last week on Friday when police announced they were searching for the 39-year-old after she was reported missing by her husband. Now, initially, investigators said Moore was last seen on Thursday of last week at a CVS on Sunset Boulevard.
On Monday of this week, police released a new surveillance photo showing Moore at a Planet Fitness on Whiteford Way. Investigators said she checked into the gym at 6:40 in the evening of June 11th and was later seen walking towards the wooded area behind the gym at a nearby Lowe's home improvement store. Police also corrected an earlier report that Moore had been found, saying that information was incorrect.
And that afternoon, a large multi-agency search of the wooded area behind the businesses turned up no sign of the woman. On Tuesday, investigators released another surveillance image showing Moore walking in front of the Publix grocery store at 9:17 on the evening of June 11th. She appeared to be wearing the same clothing seen in the gym image.
Police also released ring camera images taken about a week before Moore was reported missing. The video was quickly shared across social media platforms.
6 days. That's how long it took to go from missing to found. And in those 6 days, a quiet suburb in South Carolina turned into something nobody there ever expected. A case with a ring camera showing a woman who didn't seem to know where she was. A husband the internet convicted before police even said a word. And a search that came back empty until one phone call changed everything. Her name was Elena Catherine Moore. By the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what investigators know and exactly where the questions still don't have answers. Stick around, because the detail at the 6-minute mark is the one that made SLED, South Carolina's major crimes unit, get involved. And that's not a normal move. If you're new here, this is where we break down active cases, the same way investigators do. Facts first. Theories labeled as theories. And no pretending we know things we don't. Hit subscribe now, so you don't miss where this one goes. Because as of the last update, it's still not fully closed. Before we get into the night she vanished, you need to understand who Elena actually was, because that's what makes this case hit different. Elena Catherine Moore was 39 years old. She lived in Lexington, South Carolina, a town of around 23,000 people just west of Columbia. It's the kind of close-knit community where everybody genuinely does know everybody, which meant this story didn't stay local for long. It couldn't. She worked as a personal trainer. That was her passion: fitness, health, helping people transform their bodies. But she wasn't a one-job kind of person. She also worked at a CVS pharmacy, and she bartended at a few different spots around Lexington. Multiple jobs, multiple circles of people, multiple sets of eyes that knew her face, her voice, her routine. And here's the detail that matters more than it seems like it should. Elena was active on social media. Not the type to post once a month. She was visible, regularly engaging, present online. So when her account suddenly went quiet, people noticed almost immediately. One friend told reporters that Elena was normally very active on social media and that her going silent for the last month was completely out of character. Hold on to that phrase, out of character. It's going to come back. Now let's talk about her marriage, because this is where the case starts to get complicated. Elena had been with a man named Brandon Slice for over 13 years. 13 years of history before they made it official in 2024. So this wasn't a new relationship falling apart. This was a deeply rooted one. Less than 2 years into a marriage, when Elena disappeared, her friend Lauren Beasley told Fox News Digital that she'd spoken to Elena about a month before she went missing, and that everything had seemed completely normal. Elena hadn't said anything personal, not about the marriage, not about work, nothing that raised a flag. On the surface, everything looked fine. It wasn't. Thursday, June 11th, 2026. Around 6:40 in the evening, Elena signs into the Planet Fitness on Whiteford Way in Lexington. This is routine. She's a regular there. She goes in, spends time inside the building. Then she leaves. And this is where it stops being routine. Police confirmed Elena didn't own a vehicle. So instead of walking to a car, she walks on foot, away from the gym, toward a wooded area behind a nearby Lowe's. No one has ever explained why. Here's where the timeline gets a second twist, and it's the piece of evidence that changed the entire direction of the search. New surveillance footage surfaced later showing Elena at 9:17 p.m., roughly 2.5 hours after she'd signed into the gym, captured on a camera in a Publix parking lot on Old Cherokee Road. Same outfit, an olive green zip-up hoodie, black athletic pants. She's walking, heading down Old Cherokee Road. That is the last confirmed sighting of Elena Moore alive. No car, possibly no working phone. Police said they weren't even sure she had it with her. And by the following Monday, her phone wasn't pinging at all. She's on foot, in the dark, moving away from everything familiar. And then, nothing. The next day, June 12th, her husband Brandon Slice reports her missing. The search begins. Here's the part of this story most people don't hear until it's too late to matter. Because the night Elena disappeared wasn't the first sign something was wrong. Not even close. Go back exactly 1 week. June 4th, 2026. A couple, Sarah Burleys and John Moore, no relation to Elena, live about a half-mile from the Planet Fitness. Their Ring doorbell camera catches something that, looking back, is deeply unsettling. A DoorDash driver drops off a food order at their door. Elena walks up and picks up the order like it's hers. John Moore opens the door, takes the food back, and starts to head back inside. That's when Elena begins walking in with him, into his house, like she lives there. John Moore later told News Nation that, once he took the food from her and turned to go back in, she started walking into the house with him, and she seemed confused and disoriented about where she was or what she was doing. Confused, disoriented. Maybe that's a bad day, an off moment. Except Sarah Burles said the same thing separately. When she talked to Elena that day, Elena said she didn't know what she was doing. Not geographically lost, mentally lost. And then there's the detail that turns this from strange to serious. Before Elena disappeared, her husband commented on a Facebook post, a post that has since been deleted, saying his wife was not well. 2 words. Then the post vanishes. On top of that, there's a report, first out of News Nation, sourced from inside the investigation, not officially confirmed by police, that Elena had recently been released from a mental health facility before she went missing. Put those pieces next to each other. The confusion on camera, the disorientation a witness described firsthand, the deleted post calling her not well, the unconfirmed report about a mental health facility. That paints a picture of a woman who may have been in real crisis in the days before she disappeared. And that leaves 2 roads open. 1, Elena was going through a mental health episode and walked into the woods disoriented. A tragic accident. 2, someone knew exactly how vulnerable she was, and someone took advantage of it. Both are still on the table. We don't know which one is true. Not yet, keep that in mind, because everything from here forward has to be read through that lens. And think about the timing here for a second. This Ring camera incident happened exactly 1 week before Elena disappeared. Not a month before. Not sometime last year, according to a friend. 7 days. That means whatever was happening to Elena, whatever crisis, whatever confusion, whatever it actually was still actively unfolding, right up until the night she walked away from that Planet Fitness. This wasn't an old, resolved episode being dredged up after the fact. It was a live, ongoing situation that at least 2 neighbors witnessed firsthand, that her husband was apparently aware of enough to describe her as not well, and that, as far as the public record shows, nobody outside her immediate circle stepped in to address before it escalated into her walking into the woods alone at night. That's the piece that should sit uncomfortably with you. Multiple people saw the warning signs in real time, and still, nothing stopped what happened next. June 12th, Elena is officially reported missing, and what follows is a multi-agency search that runs nearly a week and pulls in national attention. Lexington PD starts with a drone over the wooded area behind the Planet Fitness and the Lowe's. A preliminary sweep, nothing. Monday, June 15th. They bring in everyone. Lexington County Sheriff's Department, SLED, Department of Natural Resources, SC Highway Patrol, Fire Services, EMS. They go through the wooded areas along Common Farm Lane, house by house, tree by tree. Police Chief Terrence Green is careful with his words at the press conference. This is not a recovery operation, he says. This is about ruling out locations, being methodical. The result? No trace of Elena Moore. Then social media does what social media does. A post starts circulating claiming Elena had been found. It spreads fast. Relief spreads with it. And then police walk it back. False lead. She hadn't been found. And a community that's already anxious, already exhausted, starts asking harder questions. Who put that post up? Who approved it? Why was it deleted? Is anyone actually in control of this investigation? While all of that noise is happening, new surveillance footage goes public. The 9:17 p.m. sighting near the Publix. That single piece of footage shifts the entire focus of the search away from the original area near the gym and toward Old Cherokee Road. Then, on the night of June 16th, a resident comes forward. They say they saw Elena walking into the woods near Lakeside Middle School, down the road from that Publix, on the night she disappeared. That tip is about to change everything. We have to talk about this, because it happened whether we like it or not. The moment a married woman goes missing, the internet looks at the husband first. That's just the reality of true crime culture right now. In this case, Brandon Slice became the focus of enormous online scrutiny almost overnight. So let's separate what people were saying from what the facts actually show, because those turned out to be two very different things. The criticism broke down into four main threads. First, his social media presence. People online noted that Brandon wasn't flooding his pages with updates or emotional public pleas for his missing wife, and for some, that read as strange, even suspicious. Second, the deleted Facebook comment calling Elena not well. In the court of public opinion, deleting anything while your spouse is missing looks bad, and people wanted to know what he was hiding. Third, unverified claims that a Brandon Slice from Lexington worked as a private investigator, based on a LinkedIn profile investigators couldn't confirm belonged to the same person. But online, that detail took on a life of its own, because a PI, the theory went, would know how to cover tracks.
But here's the problem with that argument.
Some pointed to the marriage timeline itself, 13 years together, married only in 2024. Why then? Was something happening in the relationship? Now here's what the actual evidence shows. Brandon Slice is the one who reported Elena missing. He cooperated fully with investigators. A private investigator working the case, Harry Dukes of Columbia-based Dukes Investigations and Consulting, told Newsweek that Slice had been distraught over Elena's disappearance. And police said, on the record, that Slice is not a person of interest. Not a person of interest. That's not internet speculation. That's the department's own statement. Does that mean the questions stop? No, not necessarily. Families have been cleared early in cases before and implicated later. That does happen, but it means we cannot convict a man in the court of public opinion based on a deleted Facebook comment and an unverified LinkedIn page. What that deleted comment might actually tell us isn't guilt. It might tell us he knew his wife was struggling, and he was trying to explain her disappearance to people close to them without broadcasting her private medical situation to the entire internet. That's possible. It's also possible there's more to this story. That's the honest answer. And anyone telling you they know for certain right now is lying to you. It's worth stepping back and asking why this pattern happens so predictably. In almost every missing persons case involving a married woman, the spouse becomes the default suspect within hours, often before investigators have said a single word publicly. Statistically, intimate partners are involved in a meaningful share of homicides against women, which is exactly why police always look closely at the husband first. That part of the instinct isn't wrong. But there's a difference between investigators are quietly ruling him in or out as part of standard procedure and the internet has already decided he did it based on a screenshot and a since-deleted comment. One of those is investigative work. The other is a pile-on that can permanently damage a grieving person's life, even if he's completely innocent. And if he is innocent, that damage doesn't undo itself just because people eventually move on to the next case. So hold both of those truths at once. It's reasonable for law enforcement to look hard at Brandon Slice as part of routine procedure. And it's also true that nothing publicly available right now amounts to evidence of wrongdoing on his part. Those aren't contradictory. They're just two different standards, one for investigators building a case and one for the rest of us watching from the outside without access to the file. June 17th, 2026. The night before, a resident had contacted police saying they saw Elena walking into the woods near North Lake Drive and Old Cherokee Road on the night she vanished, June 11th. That tip gets acted on immediately. At 1:30 in the afternoon on the 17th, officers and fire personnel begin an extensive search of the wooded area on Old Cherokee Road. Multiple agencies on foot, moving through the trees. At 2:48 p.m., they find a body. Unidentified, wearing an olive green zip-up hoodie and black athletic pants, the same clothes Elena was last seen in. Police Chief Terrence Green confirms it at a press conference in the clip you heard at the start of this video. Lexington County Coroner Margaret Fisher releases a statement confirming a female body matching Elena's clothing description had been found. But she's careful to add something critical. No positive identification has been made. No cause of death has been determined. An autopsy will be scheduled in the coming days. No cause of death yet, but what happens right after this is the detail that changes the entire tone of the case. Lexington PD requests that SLED, South Carolina's Major Crimes Unit, the agency that handles the state's most serious and complex investigations, take over the death investigation. When a reporter asks Chief Green directly whether foul play is suspected, he doesn't say no. He repeats that it's an active investigation and that SLED is now handling it. That answer is not the answer of a department that thinks a woman simply wandered into the woods and died of natural causes. That's the answer of a department that knows, or at minimum strongly suspects, that something darker happened here. We don't have an official cause of death. The autopsy hasn't been completed. Nobody, not police, not us, has confirmed this is a homicide. So let's be clear about that up front. But let's look at what we do know and ask the questions that actually matter. SLED's involvement. This is the single biggest signal in the entire case. Local departments don't call in a state's major crimes unit for accidental deaths or natural causes. They call them in when they believe, or need to rule out, that a crime occurred, and when the case needs resources and independent expertise beyond what a local department can offer. SLED being on this case means someone looked at the scene and decided this needed more. The location. The body was found in a wooded area off Old Cherokee Road, near Lakeside Middle School. This isn't deep wilderness. This is a suburban community in a mid-sized southern town. A woman doesn't typically end up in terrain like that and simply die there without someone, somewhere, knowing something. The timeline. Elena was last seen alive at 9:17 p.m. on June 11th. Her body was found on June 17th, 6 days later, in a South Carolina summer, in the woods. Decomposition after 6 days in that heat complicates everything about establishing a cause of death. It's going to be a hard autopsy. But medical examiners are trained to read what remains, and whatever they find, or don't find, is going to be critical to where this case goes next. And I want to flag this clearly as speculation, not fact. The pattern of behavior in the days before Elena disappeared raises a question nobody's answered publicly. If she really had recently been released from a mental health facility, who knew that? Who in her life understood exactly how vulnerable she was? And is there any connection between that vulnerability and what happened on the night of June 11th? Here's what a defense would likely look like if this ever becomes a criminal case. The mental health angle would almost certainly be front and center. An attorney could argue Elena was in crisis, that she wandered into the woods on her own, and that the physical evidence is consistent with misadventure rather than murder. That's a real legitimate argument, and they'd push hard on every piece of forensic evidence to make it stick. But here's the problem with that argument, and it's one prosecutors would likely raise too. A woman doesn't wander into suburban woods in Lexington, South Carolina, and leave no trace for 6 days. Drones were deployed, extensive ground searches happened. Multiple agencies spent hours combing that terrain and found nothing, until one specific tip pointed them to one specific location. That detail alone tells its own story. And here's the piece that really doesn't add up cleanly. The initial searches near the Planet Fitness and the Lowe's, the direction Elena was first seen heading, turned up absolutely nothing. Her body was found somewhere else entirely, near Lakeside Middle School, down the road from the Publix where she was last caught on camera at 9:17 p.m. That means Elena was moving through the community that night. For how long? With who? Did she encounter someone, or did someone encounter her? Those are the exact questions SLED is working to answer right now. And until the autopsy comes back, every one of them stays open. Let's slow down on that gap for a second, because it's easy to blow past it. Between 9:17 p.m. on June 11th and 2:48 p.m. on June 17th, there is a stretch of nearly 6 full days where Elena Moore existed somewhere in or near a suburban South Carolina community. And not one confirmed piece of footage, Not one verified sighting, not one phone ping placed her anywhere. In an era where nearly every business has a camera pointed at its parking lot, where doorbell cameras cover entire neighborhoods block by block, 6 days of nothing is not a small detail. It's either evidence that she moved through the one narrow corridor of town with the least coverage, or it's evidence that wherever she ended up, she got there fast and stayed there the whole time. That's the kind of detail investigators build timelines around, not because it proves anything on its own, but because it narrows the range of what's possible. If she was moving on foot that whole week, someone likely saw her, a driver, a delivery worker, a neighbor letting a dog out at 6 in the morning. If she wasn't moving, then the location where she was found on the 17th may be close to where this really began on the night of the 11th. Either way, that gap is almost certainly the piece SLED built their canvas around, and it's worth watching for in any future statement, because closing it is what turns a death investigation into a timeline with a name attached, or definitively rules one out. As of June 18, 2026, here's what's confirmed. Not theorized, confirmed. Elena Catherine Moore, 39, personal trainer, wife, and fixture of the Lexington community, had been missing since June 11th. A body matching her clothing description was found in the woods near Old Cherokee Road on June 17th. The Lexington County Coroner's Office is working to formally identify the remains. An autopsy has been scheduled. SLED is running the death investigation, and no official cause of death has been determined. That's the record. Everything past that, the speculation, the social media accusations, every theory about the husband, every whisper about foul play, is unconfirmed. All of it. And here's the part I actually want you to sit with. The internet moves fast in cases like this. It always does. A woman goes missing, details start to leak out, and before any evidence has been officially presented, before an autopsy is even in, before any charges are filed, people are already naming suspects and handing down verdicts in comment sections. I understand that impulse completely. When a 39-year-old woman described by everyone who knew her as vibrant and present ends up as a body in the trees, the anger is real, the grief is real, the need for answers is real. But what we actually owe Elena Moore is the truth. Not the version that's most satisfying, not the one that fits whatever we already believed walking in. The truth, whatever it ends up being. The autopsy is the single most important piece still outstanding. Toxicology can take weeks to come back, and decomposition makes reading injuries and cause of death significantly harder. But once those results land, they determine everything about where this case goes. If the manner of death is ruled a homicide, SLED's death investigation becomes a murder investigation, full stop. Detectives will look at everyone in Elena's life, the last people to see her, anyone who knew about her mental health struggles, anyone with a motive, anyone whose story doesn't hold up under pressure. And the husband question, already tried and decided by social media, would be formally revisited by actual law enforcement. If instead the autopsy points to an accident, a woman in crisis who wandered into the woods and succumbed to exposure or a medical event, this becomes a different kind of tragedy. No less devastating. Just a different story, with a different set of failures behind it. Because there's something bigger sitting underneath this entire case. How our systems handle people in crisis. Multiple people saw Elena confused, disoriented, nearly walking into a stranger's home like it was hers. Her husband was reportedly already describing her as not well, and she was still going to the gym, still moving through the world, seemingly without enough support around her to catch what was happening before it became irreversible. That's not an accusation against any one person. It's a gap. A systemic one. And whatever this case turns out to be, it's a window into that gap. Think about how many separate moments there were where this could have gone differently. A neighbor who noticed she seemed lost. A friend who clocked that her sudden silence online was out of character. A husband who felt the need to explain, publicly, that something wasn't right. Each of those is a person who saw a piece of the picture. None of them, individually, had the full picture, and that's usually how it works. Crisis rarely announces itself all at once to one person. It leaks out in fragments, to whoever happens to be standing nearby at the time, and unless those fragments get pieced together fast, by someone with the authority and the resources to actually act on them, the person in crisis keeps moving through the world alone, one confusing interaction at a time, until something happens that can't be undone. That's not unique to Elena Moore. It's a pattern that shows up again and again in cases like this one. And it's a big part of why stories like hers resonate the way they do. Not just because of the mystery, but because so many people watching know exactly what it looks like when someone they love is struggling, and the support just isn't there fast enough. And if law enforcement clears Brandon Slice, fully, conclusively, then what he's lived through is almost unimaginable. His wife is gone, and while he was grieving, the internet put him on trial without evidence. That's a real harm. It deserves to be named as one. But if evidence does emerge pointing somewhere else, investigators will follow it. That's how it's supposed to work. Right now, SLED is doing its job. The coroner is doing hers. And the community of Lexington, South Carolina is grieving a woman a lot of them actually knew. Someone who trained their bodies, poured their drinks, filled their prescriptions, smiled at them across a counter. That last part is easy to skip past when you're consuming a case like this from a screen, hundreds or thousands of miles away. But it's the part that actually matters most to the people living it. This isn't an abstract mystery.